think most of us know by now that at least some movies, and that some scenes within movies that we see, are subjective rather than objective. That's pretty obvious with the film The Substance, too, so it's not likely to be controversial to you when I say that the film or pieces of it are subjective. But I think a better question to ask is, how subjective is it? We know that the film is unusual and that it's heavily designed to be communicating symbolically rather than naturally. What's less obvious, and what I think most viewers and most YouTube reaction video makers have missed, is that they don't appreciate just how far into subjectivity the substance goes. Let's start by looking for a moment at an early scene in the movie, when Elizabeth meets Fred from 10th grade homeroom. They meet, he reminds her how they used to know one another. At her suggestion, he gives her his contact info, but the paper accidentally slips out of his hand into a puddle where it gets wet and dirty. Instead of doing something else, Fred fishes the paper out of the water and hands the wet, dirty paper to her a second time, and Elizabeth accepts it, and they go their separate ways. The scene doesn't give us any ominous music or wildly distorted lens shots, so the events we see are objective, right? What we see is what happened, right? Not so fast. We know that films lie to us and that what we see is not what we get. Here's a simple example from a scene in another film, 1983's Videodrome. Did the video cassette really begin pulsing, distorting, and emitting breathing sounds? We saw and heard those things happen, just like the character. So what we see is what we got, right? Obviously not. He was hallucinating, and the film wanted us to share his hallucination with him. But wait, you say, not only is Videodrome a different story by a different creator, but also that film clues us in very directly that Max Renn is hallucinating. We hear ominous music, and we know that inanimate objects don't behave that way. Even though those direct cues aren't present in the scene from The Substance, my point is that the interaction with Fred is just as weird and distorts things just as much. But casual viewers miss this. I've never been a woman, but I am both a man and a human male and have been for almost 60 years. I've also had crushes on attractive women, some of whom were acquaintances. What do I know for certain? That no man is going to pick up a dirty, muddy piece of paper out of a puddle and give it to a woman that he's crushing on and from whom he wants to get to know better. He won't do this, no matter how flustered he is. That's not an opinion, it's a fact. Coralie Farjat, who wrote and directed the scene, knows this. She didn't make a mistake. Rather, she put something subjective into the scene. She had Fred do something that no man would ever do in that situation. Give his crush a dirty, wet, disgusting piece of paper. Why? Because this scene is like many, or perhaps all scenes in the film. It's about reality twisting, reality bending, reality distorting things, all in the direction of the main character's feelings. Elizabeth feels old, dirty, disgusting, and 10th rate at this moment, and only an old, dirty, disgusting piece of paper could ever be fit for offering to a pathetic creature such as her. The paper serves other functions in the story as well. Elizabeth later searches for the paper, a physical object, finds it, and symbolically clutches it to her breast underneath her clothing. So the writer wanted her to have a physical object to clutch. Otherwise, exchanging information with Fred the way she does makes no sense. The story later establishes that both Elizabeth and Fred have smartphones. Smartphones have been around for almost 20 years. Most people have them. When you want to exchange contact info with someone now, do you write it on a slip of paper? Wouldn't you be more likely to text it to their phone? If you didn't do that, you'd do something else that was phone-related, such as typing your name and number on your phone's screen and then have the other person take a picture of the screen with their phone. After all, you can lose a scrap of paper, but most people would be very, very unlikely to lose their phone. So the whole incident with the soggy paper is contrived, both so that a later scene in the film can happen, and also so that we get to see, in a tangible way, how Elizabeth is feeling about herself, both then and later. This is not a criticism of the film. Rather, it's an alert for you that you don't read objectivity into a scene that is clearly non-objective. Is this non-objectivity limited only to some scenes in the substance? I'd say no. It's all designed from beginning to end to produce subjective impacts. Example, the film has a great many shots of food, food remains, and the act of eating. There is not a single one of these shots that renders the food or the eating inviting, appetizing, or pleasurable. Every single food-related shot is intentionally designed to evoke a feeling of low-grade or severe repulsion or disgust. Another example, there are a number of straight-up nude shots, and there are a number of shots of women's sexualized bodies, but no sexualized shot shows a nude body, and not a single straight-up nude shot in the film is sexualized. At no point does Elizabeth feel desirable or sexy. At no point does either Elizabeth or Sue feel that food is their ally. When Monstro Eliza Sue reveals herself to the audience on stage, the subjectivity is a bit easier to see. First, this world of the substance contains no real-life stage managers, ticket checkers, police, or security guards. No one whose job it is to maintain order or to ensure that neither monsters nor homeless nor other bad actors enter the building. Next, after Eliza Sue vomits out a breast,
oh God, I almost puked. Oh my God, I almost puked. Oh God.
the crowd goes wild, shrieking, name-calling, and one guy eventually takes her head off by swinging some object. Again, no security personnel to prevent an assault of a woman who is deformed, and no attempt on the part of the audience, the producers, or anyone else to do what would realistically occur in that situation. To seek medical attention for a stricken, deformed person, to investigate how she came to be there in the first place, to direct the crowd to remain calm, and to remove the person with a medical episode off stage to a more private location. The story isn't about any of those things, which is why we don't see them. It's about the reality-distorting, reality-twisting, reality-bending subjectivity in the direction of how the main character feels. How about the last moments of the film, when the bloody remains of the creature, melted onto Elizabeth's Walk of Fame star, are casually scrubbed off by the maintenance worker with the sidewalk cleaning machine? Monstro Eliza Sue, the night before, just responded to an assault on her with a much larger assault against the entire audience, covering hundreds of people with hundreds of gallons of blood in a post-AIDS, post-COVID world. When she flees the crime scene, again, there are no police, no private security, no enraged audience members, and no curious onlookers to follow her or to report on her movements. Elizabeth's star, where the final remains of the creature expire, isn't a crime scene cordoned off for CSI personnel. It's an ordinary stretch of sidewalk with a ketchup-like mess to be cleaned up. A few moments earlier, when Elizabeth's face blob detaches from the wrecked body of Monstro Elizasu, we hear Elizabeth grunting and gasping as she struggles over to her star. We hear these sounds because the film includes them, and because we associate a face that's attached to a body that's struggling to make these sounds. But Elizabeth's face at that point is maybe only 25% of a human head. She has no throat, no voice box to emit sounds, and no attached set of lungs to force air past her lips, either inhaling or exhaling. So we shouldn't be able to hear any grunting, gasping, or exhaling. Again, this observation is not a criticism of the film. It's not picking at Coralie Farjat's artistic choices. It's a description to help you become more aware of how far this film goes to bend reality in the direction of what the character feels and in the direction of the symbolic story that the director wants to tell. Thanks for listening.